Good evening, gamers. My event is over, and if you're like me, you're probably sitting on a bunch of tier 5 armor from Solstice, maybe a good roll SMG, and you're wondering if there are any fun new playstyles these can bring to the table. There's been some chatter going around as well about how strong Titans are right now, with the crazy amount of damage they can do, and how Titans are seemingly the best class in the game right now. Good. But did you know they're also the best support class in the game? Today I wanted to highlight a build that I've been using for my entire grind up to 400 power because it's powerful, survivable, very flexible, engaging, and extremely fun, all while you heavily support your team and empower them to play really aggressively, making their playstyles even stronger. The astute among you may realize this is not a bonk build like Wormgod, Synthos, or Melis that are all, they are strong and effective right now, but we're going a different direction though, because while those exotics are strong, they tend to struggle to get their gameplay loop going when you're in harder content where you can't just mow down ads with a primary, or when there isn't a good opportunity to get in close to a tanky enemy to smack with your hammer. Those builds also aren't amazing if your team doesn't have something like a Warlock or a Well to enable a less supportive team comp. The build we're covering today will not only keep you and your team alive in challenging content such as mythic campaign missions or anything -40, -50 and so on, but that's only one of the major strengths the build has. You'll be able to spam supers, do a ton of damage, be flexible with your positioning, and turn whatever your team is running into ability spam builds. Sounds pretty damn strong, right? Well, it is, and even I keep getting surprised by how effective the build is. I was running a Grandmaster Starcrossed at around, I think it was -50, and we were still able to crush it with only 2 people. We were just standing in the middle of the boss arena with no cover. It's absolutely insane, so let me show you how it all comes together. Here's the build to just copy and paste. I'll also have a dim link in the description. But while you're putting that together in another tab, let's talk about how the build works and go over the strengths and weaknesses. Phoenix Cradle and Finality's Augur are the exotics we're using today, and those two work together incredibly well. These legs have 4 amazing strengths that complement every other part of the build, as well as the current gameplay sandbox. First, Soul Invictus lasts twice as long with Phoenix Cradle, bringing it up to 10 seconds. As a reminder, Soul Invictus slows your super decay while you stand in a sunspot, and it doubles your grenade and melee regen. This allows for you to spam Consecration, Barricades, and make your super last a lot longer. This is a buff that you're going to have up pretty much all of the time, especially if you're going full support. Next, teammates who stand in sunspots also get Soul Invictus, as well as Restoration. Again, this buff will be up very frequently for your team as well, making their builds juiced to hell with much quicker ability cooldowns and free restoration. And you can leave a sunspot and keep Soul Invictus, you just won't get the, super decay buff there. But wait, there's more. Dealing sustained solar damage extends the duration of your sunspots while you're in them. Good thing this build is constantly doing sustained solar damage at all times, so your sunspots are going to be around for a very long time. But I'm not done yet. Call right now, and when you apply solar buffs to your team, we'll throw in more sunspots absolutely free. As you can see, Phoenix Cradle is the cornerstone of the build. This has been the build I've used for the entire power grind, like I mentioned. For solo gameplay, it definitely loses some value, but I still was using it. I found it incredibly strong due to having really high uptime on Consecration, being able to save myself with my super, do consistent damage, and with the new Solar SMG, from Solstice, you have a lot of survivability without any hassle at all. It still does a lot even without a team, though if you're not feeling the Cradle for solo, I guess I would recommend maybe Hellfire Heart, since with that you're going to focus less on the super spam, but more on Consecration and making sunspots on a kill. But enough about the exotic armor, let's look at the rest of the build and how that's looped in. One of the coolest parts of the build is how frequently you get your super back. Just watch this clip and look at that super meter. This crazy super gen is coming from 2 things. First, it's a roaming super, which they do have higher generation by default, so it's going to come back a lot faster than something like T-Crash or Twilight Arsenal. On top of that, since dealing damage gives us super, we're going to be able to do a lot of damage by using 2 bait and switch weapons at once. That would be Mint, Gatorade, and Finality's Augur. You do need the catalyst for Fogger to get bait and switch, which of course comes from Sundered. The weapons in that dungeon are pretty strong, so it's definitely worth farming out to get the catalyst. But Gatorade, on the other hand, can just drop from Pinnacle Ops, so when that's the bonus focus, go grab it if you don't have one already. For this use here, I highly recommend Rewind Wounds so that you can dump your ammo and get super back even faster. And I'd say bait and switch is a must, so you can get that 30% increased damage for both weapons at the same time. It's really easy though, no complex rotations here. Just throw your turret up, usually the higher it is the better, we'll go over that later. Target a boss or whatever you want to kill, tap the enemy with your other gun, and that could be, primary, another special, then dump Gatorade on them like they just won a football game. Another thing I absolutely love about the build is how effective you are while being behind cover or not directly aiming at the boss. With Fogger only requiring you to set it up and 1 pulse shot to proc bait, you're going to be able to do some alright damage just around a corner. Alright damage doesn't sound very impressive, but remember, you don't even have to have line of sight. With this build, you could sit behind cover, constantly heal and give a damage buff to your teammates with a support auto maybe, create sunspots since you're healing everyone so much, get Soul Invictus for everybody, throw a ton of barricades, Consecration, any ads that try and swarm you, which, by the way, if you don't know this, Consecration is now much stronger when you're on Solar rather than on Prismatic. So while you can't spam it like you can on Prismatic, it's going to be a lot stronger, and it's going to one-shot a lot more things than a Slam would on Prismatic, which again is a little bit slower if you have to spam it multiple times, so I would say this Solar one is a lot better. You're also giving your team constant healing from sunspots that also give them the double melee and grenade regen. Oh yeah, and all of that isn't even considering your super spam, which really does some decent damage, but the biggest strength is that it's flexible for ad clear, support, and boss damage all at the same time. You're basically doing everything you could possibly do all at once. You're healing yourself, healing your team, you're doing ad clear, you're blocking incoming damage with your barricades, you're buffing your team, you're buffing yourself, and you're able to do some solid burst damage when you have a chance to use your special, but even during your super, you can still have Finality's Augur going up with bait and switch, so you're really doing a lot of damage. But this isn't just a support setup, it really does it all. So by now, I think you get the idea, but since I know not everyone has a perfectly decked out setup, I'll break the loadout down into parts that are essential and parts that you can kind of safely disregard. For the essentials, I can't really imagine running the build without both the Fogger and Gatorade with bait and switch. Those two are a definite lock, though I know some snipers, have some really good perks like Praedyths. You could put that on and that also gets bait and switch, so that might be worth it depending on, what you want to run. I mentioned before that for solo content, obviously you don't need to be running a support auto, but if you're in team content where the enemies are actually a bit threatening, like, at least minus 30 or lower, no hesitation with Physic is a must, and yes, definitely that one over the Adamantite, the other support auto, because no hesitation is solar, and we get a lot of value out of matching our subclass here. For stats, the most important one is at minimum 100 super, but I highly recommend you try pushing that to 200. I have gotten a ton of value from my super being able to not only be up a lot, but also actually kill ads in harder content and deal some damage to bosses. After that, 100 or higher melee feels great, and that means essentially you'll always have Consecration when you need it. That's the most important thing. And if you're able to get it higher than 100, that's just more damage and will serve you very well. Weapon stat isn't super important here, as we're already doing solid sustained damage, and the build isn't really about, pumping big numbers. It's more about consistency and utility. You're also going to have solar surges on your legs, most likely, so Fogger's going to be doing some really good damage with that too. So it's really not a huge deal if you don't have high weapons. Otherwise, the rest of your stats don't matter a ton since you'll be getting so much ability energy, and the health, grenade, and class stats just aren't going to get you more value than, pumping up your melee and super. So you should really full spec into those two. As for mods, one special ammo finder is highly recommended since you're much less likely to run out of heavy with this setup, and Gatorade is just oppressively good right now. Again, I said you could change it up maybe, if it works for you, or if, this gets nerfed. But anyways, heavy-handed is a must. I'd say since you're going to be getting quite a few consecration kills, it'll just be a nice bonus on top of focusing strike, which is going to get your barricade up even faster. Recuperation is still really strong, especially since we're not speccing into health at all, and pairing that with solar surges is definitely the way to go. I know recuperation is, I think, bugged or, stealth nerfed or something. I am still getting a lot of value, even if that is the case. Lastly, for your class item, I do think all three of these here are pretty important, so put on Outreach to combo with Focusing Strike, then Time Dilation and Powerful Attraction for easy orb pickup and more consistent uptime on surges. That makes Fogger, of course, do more damage much more consistently. And that's really it for the build. But as I now have a lot of experience with this in a lot of different environments, I'll impart some tips and tricks to you that have helped me optimize or otherwise smooth out the build's loop and make it even more effective. Some of these are really fun to execute or pay attention to during combat, so if you want to step up your game and be an even bigger asset to your team beyond just copying the build, here's some juice for you. We'll start with some tips for the Fogger and how to maximize its potential. As a general rule, you want to put the turret pretty high above whatever you're shooting at, obviously, but you should also consider more than just putting it high up depending on the encounter. What I love about Fogger, and one of its biggest strengths, is its flexibility. Sometimes it's helpful to have the turret positioned behind a boss if they have maybe front-facing shields, or if you don't want to be at risk of taking damage yourself, it can be left to deal, damage itself while you do mechanics across the arena, or just run away to safety. It also works extremely well against multiple big targets. It lets you focus down one with Gatorade while it handles the other. This lets the build maintain consistency in really any activity. Fogger also has really surprising range on the turret. It's almost able to clear packs of ads at sniper range, so anything less than that is totally covered. This means you can set the turret at a central location and quickly paint multiple groups of targets across a wide area. A perfect use case for this would be in something like the Inverted Spire, where you're forced onto plates while many packs of enemies spawn in front of you. In those side rooms, I make sure to set the turret up above the building before I go in, then target paint the ground in front of the doorway so any ads crossing through it get blasted while I focus on the other side myself. Additionally, you can paint multiple targets in different locations and Fogger will take them all out. It will focus the first target until it's dead or untargetable, then move on to the next valid target you've painted. This thing is insane. I've got 3 more quick tips regarding the turret. It can bounce off walls during the initial placement shot, so if you're in a really tight space and you need to get it around a corner, you do have an option there. But something to caution you about, especially if you're, ever bouncing it off the walls like that, be very aware of self-splash damage and boss stomps. Fogger can destroy itself with splash damage, and boss stomps are surprisingly vertical, as experienced players probably know. So use its range to your advantage and position it a little bit smartly, considering those options. The last tip for the turret is to not use it sometimes. With the fragment we have going, Consecration will apply Radiant, and if you swap to the Linear Fusion mode, it will be a fantastic tool for one-tapping barrier shields with 2 follow-up shots with bait and switch, while the turret targets them too. That is a lot of burst damage, but it's really ammo inefficient to, shoot your linear like that, so make sure you don't spam LFR shots during boss damage. That's usually what Gatorade is for, unless, of course, the boss is about to die or whatever. But don't be afraid to use ammo more frequently either. While the gun is extremely valuable, you now have ammo meters, so you'll always know exactly when you're going to get more heavy. Just save 3 ammo at minimum if you know you'll need it soon, and use it to focus down champs, ads, or whatever you need. It's really not a complex thing to pay attention to either, so just keep tabs on your ammo econ and use it more thoughtfully than other heavies. I've got some tips for the rest of the build too. You probably already know this one, but if you start Consecration and jump up, but the ads die before you can slam back down, just don't press the button and you'll only spend about half the melee energy. I'm trying to think of good ways to use the initial Scorch Wave without using the Slam to actually get some value. Maybe Burning Ambition somewhere? I'll let you know in the comments if I find that to be useful. Either way, it's good to just conserve the energy in these cases. Hammers, the super, make so many orbs on ad clears, so pay attention to when your teammates use their supers and practice chaining yours in time with theirs if you're able to. You get great damage resist during super and of course sunspots and everything going on there. You can also still throw your healing grenade and put up a barricade during super, so it's a great panic button. Make sure you're applying your super where it's needed too, so don't just pop it and only spam hammers at the boss. You know, sometimes that's good if there's really nothing much else going on, but the point of the build is to empower your entire team, so during a damage phase, your super is going to get more value if you focus any ads that try and gank your team, or if you throw a hammer at them. You know, I usually start and end my super with a sunspot on my team. One thing that's good to know is that if you pop your super while you're on the ground, you'll make a sunspot at your feet. So stand with your team before you start slinging them around, and then throw your last hammer at your team's feet again if they need it. Or just make another sunspot with your heal nade. You got options. But this is what I mean when I refer to the flexibility. The better your situational awareness is, the more effective you'll be. And while that's true for everyone all the time, this build has a lot more utility than most, so it's something I highly suggest investing some more effort into. I'm sure there are a lot of tweaks and strategies you could adapt to work with this setup, so just go for it. Change this up to work for you and let me know if you have any other synergies or swaps you end up finding useful. That's really everything I wanted to go over though. I've been loving this build so much, and hopefully you do too. Have a good one, gamers.